Hey, everybody. Welcome to WP Roundtable episode 127, the first episode of 2017. Today, I've got special guest Bridget Willard with me from WordImpress, all the way from the West Coast. How you doing this evening,
I'm
Bridget?
doing well. Thank you very much. How are you?
I am doing great. I need to remember to correct myself and not always say evening because it's still mid-afternoon for you.
It's mid-afternoon and I haven't had lunch, but let's go with evening.
That's great. Well, we're going to try and breeze through this discussion and cover a lot of topics at once. There's so many things I want to ask you about, and I'm really excited about our time together. So
Me
thank you
too.
very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Before we dive into a discussion about what it is that you do and where you come from and all the things that you're interested and involved in, let's cover our quick picks of the week. What do you say?
I say that's a great idea.
Awesome. So this is just a part of the show where those of us present share something interesting that we've learned or come across in recent times. Most recent for me that comes to mind is I've started using a program called Git Scout. It's an app that I've installed on my Mac. And basically, it's a native application for the Mac for managing and viewing GitHub issues, which is something that I do very extensively all day long. From the client projects that our team of developers are working on, to some of the plugins that we are developing on the side, to some of the open source projects that I participate and contribute to other plugins that I'm helping support. There are issues popping up all day long on dozens and dozens of repositories that I'm a member of. And I love having a native app for viewing these. It gives me a very elegant UI for switching between repositories much faster than visiting GitHub on the web. It gives me push notifications and lots of other little just keyboard shortcuts that make my workflow faster. So if you're that kind of person like I am, who is just interacting with and commenting on issues all day long, then you might want to check out Git Scout. I think it's made my workflow faster. So it's still kind of in beta, but they're iterating on it rapidly, and I very much enjoy it. So check it out. Git Scout. I don't even know where you find it. Look for it. You'll find it. Bridget, what have you got to share with us today?
I was cleaning the house last week and doing a little spring cleaning in January and or late December, and I came across a TED Talk. Now, I am a sucker for a good TED Talk, and Steven Johnson, who's the author of How We Got to Now, has a series on PBS. He also has a really good TED Talk, and there's a podcast and a book, which I bought from my next airplane ride, called Wonderland. Super good. It's like really digestible, 15 minutes. It's about ideas and innovation and play, and how it's not always you just sitting there concentrating on something to find a solution, but how even the fact that programming came from programming a music box just for fun, not for any practical purpose at all. And that the more fun that we have, the more ideas we come up with, which I find fascinating because it's just not native to me. I'm not a natively childlike person who comes up with wonder and ideas, and it just feels like in our industry of tech, we forget to have fun sometimes. But for me, because I came from a totally different industry, I feel like it's like I need to have that almost revival of play and how important it is to ideas and being creative. So Wonderland podcast by Stephen B. Johnson. You can find him on Twitter at Stephen B. Johnson.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Bridget. That sounds like an awesome pick of the week and something I'm interested in checking out myself. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
So at this time, we're going to start by learning a little bit about your background. For those who perhaps by chance don't know too much about you already, it's possible that someone could be viewing this now or in the future. And so let's cover that just a little bit. And if there's one thing that I can say about people in the WordPress community, having interviewed well over 100 of them by now on this show,
Fancy.
There isn't what I would say what I would classify as a typical background for someone who is an active participant in this community. However, yours really, from what I understand about it, stands out as even more atypical than most. quite different. So I want to unpack that just a little bit. Let's go back long before, long before WordPress and WordImpress and the like. Tell us a little bit about your early career and what it is that you set out to do with your life.
Oh man. So originally, you know, you have all these dreams and then life happens. I mean,
You're right.
you know, I mean, I was one of those people who literally sat in high school saying, I know what I'm going to be when I grow up, you know, and I had a lot of ideas about what I wanted to do. I changed my major like 5 times. It was ridiculous. I spent way too much time in college, but I ended up getting a multiple subjects teaching degree. I taught high school and junior high math for 1 year, and decided I never, ever, ever want to do that again. I hated the parents. No offense to any parents in our audience, but it was horrible because you can never please that many people. And they took their disdain for math and put it on their relationship with me. And I like to be liked, which is funny because I evolved in all these careers where, you know, it was, you know, math teacher. I spent some time in accounts receivable and collections, which is not the most agreeable position to be in if you want people to like you. So, I mean, what happened was I had a trade because back in high school, when I was in high school, you took classes to have a trade. Trades were really important in the education system. And so I learned to be a secretary. And so I basically fell back onto that after the whole college thing didn't work out the way I wanted it to, plus life. I was married when I was 20. We lost the business a year and a half later, which was trucking. So I spent my entire career in male-dominated industries: trucking, publishing, church, and construction, and now tech.
Fascinating.
That's the one thing that's
observation. Wow.
That's the thread that's male-dominated industries, and I've been navigating the male ego since 1995.
Wow.
Actually, 93, but that's good.
That sounds like
95
something
sounds
you've reflected on a bit.
Well, you know, sometimes strategies to be successful require a little bit of communication in the way that's preferred to the recipient. Let's just put it that way.
It sounds like you're going to educate me on some things today, and I'm excited about them.
You're so smart. You know everything already, Kyle. Wink. We need a little sound effect because that was, anyway.
Yeah, you're great.
Little subtext. Oh man, but basically I've always worked on a computer, and it became easy for me to use a computer. I would never say I'm a programmer. I knew enough like HTML and CSS to get myself into trouble, but that's not really my thing.
Sure. Yeah, so if we could, walk me through some of the big milestones of your career that kind of like took you to the next step and eventually led you to where you're at today, like those big turning moments.
Career milestones. So this is a job interview. Okay, so if I was a tree, no, for serious. So I went to graduated high school in 1991. Got married in 93. I was a collections manager for a trucking company that had 2 facilities that had like a $5 million, which was pretty good in 1993, 94. It went out of business in 95 due to some shenanigans, financial shenanigans, not on our part. So I was in college still, moved to Southern California from Northern California, and then graduated from college in 97, went to the multiple subjects teaching credential program at Fullerton, and then taught for a year high school and junior high math. which I will never do that again. I believe I said that. But what's funny is I knew all these homeschooling parents from church. So then once they found out I used to teach algebra, that was it. I privately tutored for 10 years on the side.
Wow.
Yeah, most of the time what people have trouble with algebra is they don't understand it's a language and that it has nothing to do with arithmetic. I mean, you should know 6 plus x equals 8, that x is 2 in your head. And if you don't, that's a different problem, right? So what you're doing is you're learning how to manipulate the logic. And so once people understand that you're just learning how to manipulate all of these sides of the equation, they stop thinking of it was, why do I have to do this when I know the answer? The answer is not the answer. The answer is the process. And so, yeah, I did that for 10 years.
To me.
It is. I mean, it's logic, right? I'm just not a programmer. Like, okay, so I had this like midlife crisis when I was teaching, and I took this test, Kyle. So it's just me and you ripping here, right? And I was like, what could I do with my life? Because I didn't have a whole lot of guidance. You know, I grew up really poor. I was the first one to graduate from college, and my blah, 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 sad story. And so I'm like, what should I have been doing? Like, I was one of those first people that had no direction, who thought they had direction. And I took this test based upon my personality and my aptitude. It gave me 20 engineering jobs.
Wow.
All 20 jobs were engineering. Like, so clearly I should have been like a structural engineer or something, but I didn't take calculus. Like, I just gave up on all that. So there was a period where I thought about, like, I should just learn how to teach. I should just teach algebra in junior college, because then there's no parents. But then you have to be a math major, and you have to, it's all sequential. And I was like, I don't have time for that. I'd be like 40 years old before I did that. Like, so even my plans were just, that's why I said, like, you can have all the dreams that you want, and you can have all the goals that you want, but life is going to do what life is going to do. And there's a certain amount of that you just can't control. And so anyway, career highlights, like in 2001, I started working at a roofing company. Then I worked for another one from like 02 to 05, something like that. I spent 6 years in roofing, and then I spent 9 years as a general contractor, doing office manager, collections, receivables, HR, blah, blah, blah. But I always was building the websites for these people, on the side, front page, Dreamweaver. They sent me to HTML classes, blah, 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 all that stuff. And because, like, it's easier to in-house all this, right? And then, by the time I'm at the general contractor, they have this static HTML piece of crap. I'm like, yeah, I could do that in Dreamweaver, right? So it was hideous and horrible, but it was better than what they had before. It ended up being the first WordPress site that I ever built, which they did not keep after I left that job. So everything that I wrote for that whole company is gone, which is sad, really, because it was good material. I'm just saying. So, like, I've always been one of those self-taught, self-driven. If there's something that can be done and I could do it, by golly, I'm gonna rise up to the occasion. Just make it happen. Whatever. This, like, American grit and ingenuity. It's like making goulash and there's nothing to eat. You just open the covers and figure it out. Like, that's like where I excel. And so I've always just like, so when we had that really bad recession in 2009, I was working in construction, and that was what was hit the hardest. And we were getting calls all day long. We laid off 30 people. We're shutting down. I'm retiring. Da, 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 da. And so I just said, well, I've been using Twitter for myself for a couple of years. I said, I'll just start a Twitter account. It'll probably fail, but what if it doesn't, What if it doesn't fail? I'd already done their website. So then I started the Facebook page, and then I started the writing content and putting on the WordPress.com blog. Like, I had a CSS site for them and a WordPress.com blog. It was just so backwards. Like, I swear, Kyle, my slogan should be, I do everything the wrong way so you don't have to. Like, that's really, because I just don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to get in there and do it. Just, I'll just hunker down and do. I don't read manuals, or I really don't learn from reading at all. I'm in there with my hands in the, like, I would be the cowboy coder. If I were programming, it would be like, oh, this is live. What does this do? What does this do? I would be the worst, you know? So that's kind of like how I got into like social media. I just started doing it. It was very successful. I don't have any problem saying that, because I grew that Twitter account to 20,000 followers, which is huge for a commercial contractor. We brought in business. I had answers to the ROI question. Years and years later, you know, I was just great, but it was all self-taught. So what happened was, because so you're looking at a resume, you're looking at jobs. So I finally came to the point where it's like, okay, first of all, nobody's getting any younger over here. It's just reality, right? And social media is like all the teeny bopper things. Like, they think all the 20-year-olds should be able to do this without thinking logically that this is really somebody who should be disciplined and have, you know, discernment and some wisdom in their life, and what you shouldn't say, and what consequences might, you know, happen. And so I started looking at all these jobs, and I was like, journalism or master's in business. I'm like, seriously, people? It was really discouraging, but I just didn't, you know that would happen. But then when I went to WordCamp San Diego in it must have been 2015. Yes, 2015, accidentally landed in desktop server class. It's called like installing WordPress locally, which I always tell the guys, those desktop server people are my favorite people. So I always tell them that meant nothing to me. To me, what local means is that you grow corn in your backyard and you sell at the farmer's market. Right? And I kept saying to my friend Carol, I wish there was a way you could kind of test WordPress out without like committing to a host. You could just like play around with it. Like, I knew like that should be an option.
Imagine
I
that.
didn't know about any amps or lamps or stamps or bamps or zamps. Okay, I didn't know anything about any of that. I just knew it'd be cool if you could try this out without committing to a host. So I just heard my friend Heather Steele in her class, Jason Tucker was going to be next. We just landed there. And Steve gets up there for desktop server. He's like, yeah, you just install this on your hard drive. I'm like, what? This is the answer to my WordPress prayers. Like, this is exactly what I wanted. So, of course, I've got desktop server, and then within a week, I merged this CSS piece of crap with my WordPress.com blog, corrected all those links manually because I didn't know what a 301 was. Technically, I still don't know what a 301 is. And so everybody, like, when I tell them I corrected the links manually, there's like this whole look of horror. Like I said, I learned things the hard way, so you don't have to. Yeah, and then I wrote about this experience, this horrific, traumatic experience. And Mark Benzakini and I were talking about it at WordCamp US earlier this month. He goes, I still remember those tweets. I was like, yeah, shoot me now, because I just do. I don't read. I just do it. So, Kyle, this is hilarious now, but so I didn't know you needed a live server to deploy. I told you, I just do, right? And they're like, oh, so I have to buy a hosting? It has to be actually live to deploy this? I don't get it. Why is, you know, and to me, deploy, it took me a long time to get that word too, because I thought deploy is like a bunch of Marines landing on Normandy. What is these words that we use in tech make no sense outside of that world, right? You just know what you know, like. So for me, it was so much doing and going backwards and doing and going backwards and doing and going backwards. But to make a long story shorter, I wrote about it. My friend Heather put it in Advanced WordPress. Matt Cromwell from WordImpress saw it and said, I think you should review plugins for you. And I said, did you read this article? Because clearly... Clearly, I am not the person that you think should be. I think you should go back and read. There was emails going back and forth. You have the wrong person. I think you have the wrong. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. So yeah, I started writing for them in like May 2015, and they gave me when they found out that I do social media, which is really my thing, and they gave me Give Twitter account June 30th of that year, and then we entered some lunch negotiations, which I assume was some millennial culture fit thing. Because there was no official, like, here's my resume. There was none of that. And I started working for them in December. I just had my 1-year anniversary. So there's your milestones in 23 minutes.
It's fantastic.
30 years of work experience in 20 minutes.
Pretty exciting ride, Bridget.
It's been insane. Insane. And like I said, I was totally thrown into the 12-foot end of the pool, of the WordPress pool. And so like I consume everything I can, podcasts, whatever. Oh, and then Jason Tucker asked me to co-host this WordPress show. I thought he was pranking me. You've been fucked. Well, because I don't know anything. Like, why you have me on a question and answer show? He's like, I think it'd be good because you're a marketer. And I'm like, well, I'm not even really that, but like, let's just go on with that narrative.
Have you ever heard of the imposter syndrome, Bridget?
I live the imposter syndrome. Here's the thing, though. Well, I wrote a really good post about that, actually. But the thing is, it's a feedback loop issue. So when we self-teach in this industry because it moves way too fast. There's no degree you can hang on your wall. You know, you could take maybe a class from Zach Gordon and he'll say that you're a JavaScript pro, but it's just him saying it, right? You can teach your own class. You could take a class from this person or that, but there's no like piece of paper that tells you and the world that you are good at your job or you're good at social media. It's the same thing. There's no real certificate. It's all just somebody's opinion. It's not the same as having a master's in mathematics or a master's in business or, you know, a PhD in psychology, which was my original goal, right? None of that is documented on paper. You are learning as you go based upon projects. And so you might have specific knowledge to that project. Like for me, I've always worked in business to business. So my thing is relationship marketing. I don't know diddly squat about retail. I don't give a crap about Snapchat, right? Because it's just not affecting my life. But then, so then when somebody says, well, do you know this and that and whatever? Then you're like, well, I guess I don't. Like when I was originally going to headhunters for accounting jobs, which I never had a degree in accounting either. I was just good at it because it's math. The guy goes, well, do you know how to do a pivot table in Excel? I'm like, I learned it in class. Yeah, but could you do it right now? I'm like, hold on, buddy. You know, like, no, I guess I'm an intermediate, not advanced. Like, I mean, because people will be so aggressive toward you, like, well, you don't really know social media unless you could do pay-per-click. Or like even the jobs I was looking at, they wanted you to be able to build a website, do Photoshop graphics, and do social media. Those are 3 different jobs, people.
Wow. Okay,
like there is no one side. Like a race car driver isn't responsible for the maintenance of that race car or the promotion. He's just supposed to get inside that vehicle, not die, and win the race. Right? This is, and you know, kiss some babies and take some pictures. He's not responsible for the engine, promotion, getting any, you know, even the pit stops. He just drives in, everybody, and he goes, you know. But for social media, all of a sudden you have to know websites and Photoshop and video editing. And it's like, are you serious? Just because it's on a computer doesn't mean it's my responsibility. Like, you've been looking at too many stamps, and clearly you don't even know what your role is in life. And so you just want it to put it all this person who knows how to touch a keyboard with their fingers, and so therefore they should have all these skills. So then you start thinking, oh wow, I really don't know this, you know. So and then on top of that, we work remotely, so it's not like you're sitting there going, hey, yeah, you know, like when I was doing accounts receivable, I had less than 4% over 90 days, which is hugely amazing. So if you know anything about accounting, to have less than that way out there like that, is like, I could just walk in and go, yeah, I could get a job saying, yeah, I had less than 4% over 90 days. Actually, less than 4% over 45, which is even better. But like, people know what that is. Like, yeah, this is great. It'd be like somebody in our world going, yeah, I worked on Yoast 3.0. Like, we would know what that meant, right? But there's nothing like that for us. And so you're just constantly learning project by project, and your feedback loop is yourself and your customer and maybe a coworker. You know what I'm saying? So there's a real lack of feedback in our work, and I think that's what really contributes to the imposter syndrome.
Really?
That's my personal theory. That's one of my habits, is I like to have personal working theories. So, yep.
Is there anything that you think that we can do about this, or anything that you've learned that has helped?
Well, collaboration helps a lot. Going to meetups helps a lot. In our Women Who WP meetup, we talk about what we learned the last 30 days in WordPress. And so it helps for us to not think, oh, that girl is so amazing. Of course she knows this answer, and now I'm embarrassed that I don't know this answer. Because we project what we think should be reality onto other people. It doesn't mean that that is reality, because we're constantly making these assumptions in our mind. But if that girl who's been doing graphics for 30 years says, oh yeah, I tried this and the client didn't like it, and I was using Photoshop and I couldn't get the vector to work, or something, blah, 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 whatever, then we're like, oh wow, she struggles too. Now I don't feel so embarrassed to say, I had this problem like uploading a file to the media library or whatever, and somebody else is like, yeah, I really want to learn JavaScript this year, blah, blah, what's libraries better, blah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, because it's really in our head, us projecting those values onto other people and how they're going to perceive us because of how we perceive ourselves. But once those barriers are broken down and you have this just honest dialogue, I feel like you have this championship, you know. Like, even when I gave my first WordCamp talk, I was just like, oh, this is so nervous, and the girl made me a keynote, and like, way to like set me up to fail, dude. And so one of my friends, on Twitter at the time, who actually works for us now, Kevin Hoffman, he said, remember, and this is what's different about WordPress than the real world. Nobody wants you to fail. Everybody in that audience is rooting for you to succeed. That is a huge, huge difference from the real world. Or, not that our world is fake, but there's an aspect of our community that's extremely generous. You guys are giving away your intellectual property for the betterment of the world. So there's a thread of generosity in this culture that doesn't exist other places. I was actually talking to, when I was still working in the construction world, I was talking to Jeff Zinn, who at the time was lead organizer of WordCamp Orange County. He was like, it had to be 2014, and he was like, what do you think about all this? Like, he was really curious about my perception, and I was like, well, in my world, it's like the scene from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Are you familiar with this movie?
Mm-hmm.
Where there's this kingdom where no children are allowed, and the guy is going like, get some candy, children, children, you know, with this little pointy finger, and he's just trying to trap the kids because the kids all get locked up because there's no fun. And in construction especially, things are bid so tight that everybody's competitive and super jealous and not trusting, because there's a lot of backstabbing in that industry. And then I'm at WordCamp, you got hosts all eating lunch together, and it's more like Willy Wonka, the 1970s one, where you walk into the garden and everything's edible. Really, the only rule is don't go in the chocolate fountain, right? Everything's wonderful, world of imagination, da 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 da. You know, like, it's just, everything's great. And even to this day, like this many years later, I'm like, seriously, I cannot believe that these people that work for GoDaddy, Pantheon, WP Engine all hang out together at WordCamps, and they never treat each other like competitors when they are. Right? It's a totally different mindset. I'm just, right?
You're absolutely right. It's amazing.
Totally different. And so there's like this whole world. It's been really hard for me to trust it.
I can imagine with a career like you've described. This must seem different. And I know personally,
Like,
whenever I explain it to other people in my life,
what's your angle?
they
Like,
don't
what do you
believe me.
really want me on the show for? What are you trying to get? You know, like that would be my
That's right.
reaction. Like, you must want something from me because there's no way you would just do this out of the goodness of your heart. Da 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 da.
Well, I do
Right?
want something, Bridget. I wanted to get a chance to talk with you.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, the cynicism was so inbred in me. I was talking to Greg Franklin at WordCamp Orange County this year, and I said, you know what? I can say without a doubt that the WordPress community has taught me how to be loved.
Wow.
Drop the mic.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Pretty powerful stuff. So
I know, I'm not trying to make you cry or anything. I'm just saying it's a totally different world.
yeah, it's really a lot to process, and I'm still learning how to describe it. And I was just having discussion the other day over the holidays with people, you know, relatives and boyfriends of siblings and stuff, and talking about our respective work. And you know, when you describe this, I'm sure that you have similar experiences. You know, people just don't believe you if they live in other industries.
Well, you know, I just tell the general population that we build software that helps nonprofits collect money.
That's
They
great.
can understand that, right? So they're like, why are you with all this WordPress? Well, because I have a church background. So when I first started going to WordCamp, they thought I was learning the Bible. Because the Bible is referred to as the word of God.
Right.
Like, no.
Okay.
It's about WordPress. They're like, what's WordPress? I go, it's software that people use to build a website. Like, that's all they need to know. I don't even really know the content part of it's a database that's built on, you know, MySQL and whatever the LAMP thing is, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, right? Like, even if I said that, like, nobody's going to know. It's just like people build websites on this. They use it to write content. We call that blogging, you know. And so like, well, I don't understand what you're doing. I'm like, we're going to a conference. Every industry has a trade show. A WordCamp is our trade show. Oh, okay. Like, as soon as I say trade show, they get it. I work at the booth. I tell them about our product. Everybody understands trade shows.
There are a lot of people in my life who joke, but maybe are somewhat convinced that it is a cult.
I have called it that before because it is really a very closed yet open community. And I will, okay, so in 2015, Alex Vasquez asked me to do the social media for WordCamp LA. And I was like, sure, no problem. I know social media. I can do this. But in order to do social media well, you need to study the culture. Every industry has a culture and a subculture. And so you've got to look at it is put your sociology hat on, right? Because in order to resonate with them, you have to mirror. We're wired in our brains for mirror neurons. So if you say, how are you doing today? I'm doing great today. How are you doing? Like, it's just that it just comes naturally to us to mirror. And I knew that there were private jokes because of Alex's hair. Like, I didn't know him that well. I just knew Alex has nice hair and it's a big joke. It's an inside joke. And so I was having really a lot of trouble because I didn't see a whole lot of, I am a big, huge believer of listening to your customers by using lists on Twitter. And so I have all these lists. I'd put people on lists and I'm reading these tweets, but I knew enough to know I was missing a lot of context. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm,
Like, there are conversations. This is before I knew that Slack existed or P2 or whatever, you know, you guys do in the back roads of whatever, of the internet, the dark internet of WordPress or whatever. You know, like, I had no idea. I only knew Twitter. Sure, I could do Twitter. It's really easy. La, 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 right? But I go, I am not resonating with these people. People are not, like, picking up on this. And then I talked to some people and I realized, okay, they do have a good culture because there's inside jokes, and inside jokes is a result of emotional intimacy. Okay, so I'm like, you guys are like the pandas. You've never seen them breed, but there are more pandas, so obviously it happens. Okay, so
All right.
I knew there was another place this conversation was happening. I just didn't know it was Slack. I didn't know what, because it wasn't happening in public, but obviously because of the private jokes, it was happening. I mean, the hashtag Carl 2016 was a hashtag, and hashtag Hi Roy was a hashtag. So these private jokes are a result of emotional intimacy and friendship, but the culture was closed to the public as far as that. But once you get to a WordCamp and you're interacting with people in person, then you're like, oh, click, 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 click. A lot of these things are happening offline at WordCamps, at meetups, and then like there's this one joke like what happened with me and Bridgetable, and then it ends up just being this thread that goes on for years. You know, and so that's what I mean by a closed but open community. Like once they let you in, you're in, kind of like a gang without the tattoos. But it's hard to get in because they don't trust you right away. Want to make sure you're not going to take advantage of them.
Or steal their intellectual property.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, because to me, that's like, people go, I don't understand this. I go, everybody in WordPress is generous. If you weren't, you wouldn't be contributing to open source, because in any other world, that would be proprietary. Like, right. I write my blog posts, I'm not giving it to the world. I write music, I'm not giving it to the world. You know, I believe in copyright. Like, can I say that on that show and not be, disbanded or excluded from the group? I mean, I'm just saying.
We'll bleep it out later.
We'll bleep it out, right? But I'm just saying, so as a person who creates content, I'm a believer in the copyright laws, right? And even the foundation has a trademark law over the WordPress trademark, and you can't buy a domain with WordPress in it. And the whole existence of the WordPress Foundation is to protect said trademark that was given to it in 2000 whatever, right? So, but you guys are making this software, you're giving it voluntarily. So it makes you a very generous community, and I found that to be true in every aspect of my life.
Fascinating. There's so many things that I'd like to ask you about, Bridget, and so little time, so I'm going to have to try and focus on what I think. The first ones that kind of come to my mind. Tell me a little bit about your perspective on gender issues in the WordPress community, especially after reflecting on your experience in other industries. Just
to see if people are going to, like, build an effigy of me. Just do it safely, call the fire department. Okay, so I would consider myself a reasonable feminist. And I've come up with that term because I don't believe that men are the reason why women don't have opportunities anymore. I mean, maybe in 1960, but it is not. I feel like we have so many opportunities. I'm a self-made man. I don't have a problem saying I'm a self-made man and using man to refer to humanity, right? I'm not that person. I am wearing a bra, I'm not burning it, right? So the thing is that I feel like I like the chivalrousness. I want a man to open a door for me, but I don't want to make $10 an hour less. So that's why I think I'm a reasonable feminist. So our group, we didn't go around, all the men are in the dev meetup and all WordPress meetups are men. Blah. We didn't do that. We're just like, let's just have dinner. It wasn't that we saw like some oppressive force with gender and that they were excluding. It's just, here's the thing. Women dialogue differently than men. It's just the way it is. And not every woman, but in general, which is what we're doing, we're generalizing about genders. And so women go to places where their friends are, and we have seen more women go to our meetups. We didn't realize that our meetup would be kind of an onboarding situation, but it's happened that way because they feel like there's friends there. I don't like to go places alone. It sucks to go. I mean, I went to WordCamp alone. It was hard, as a girl, but I didn't feel like threatened or anything. It's just, I like my girlfriends. We like to go blah, 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 whatever. And I was describing it this way, like a man will come to a WordPress meetup and say, yeah, I was trying to do this form and I wanted to accept payment and the API for Stripe wasn't working, so blah, 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 blah. And then they go, oh, here's a solution, right? Is that fair, the way a man describes a problem? Okay, so a woman will go, okay, I just got this new client and she has a hair salon, but she wants to be able to accept payment online. So I got Gravity Forms. I was thinking, should I use PayPal or Stripe or UPay or checkout? I don't know. We decided on Stripe. She likes Stripe the best. And so like I did this integration, but then I did this thing and the API calls weren't working. And I didn't know if I should go back to Gravity Forms or should I use Caldera or, you know, I wasn't sure. And then we were having lunch and while we were drinking tea, I was realizing that maybe it's an API, like it's a story with social details. Whereas a man will tell the problem with technical details. It's not that one is better or worse. It's just the way that we act. So send all hate mail to, you know, I don't feel like there's any active oppression. I would say it's exactly the opposite, because I came from construction where I invented the dumb blonde strategy in order to get ahead. Because if you want to get your ideas put forward in a actively sexist culture like construction, you have to make the man think it was his idea. That's why I said I've been navigating the male ego since 1993. So once he thinks it's his idea, then this is great, let's just do this. Like that FedEx commercial from the Super Bowl a few years ago. The guy's like, I know what we'll do, we'll save 10% on shipping. And nobody else like says anything. And then the guy at the head goes, I know we'll save 10% on shipping by going to FedEx.com. The guy goes, that's what I did. He goes, you didn't do this. Right? So there's it's very actively, and the men are threatened by strong, intelligent women in the construction and trucking industries and all those industries. But when I come here, they want me to have ideas, right? All of my guys are like, what do you think we should do? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, wait, I can be smart. I don't have to like suddenly sneak my idea in by whispering in this person's ear so it's really their idea. So you don't have to play all those games. So I think it's totally different the way, because I feel like maybe there aren't as many women as we'd like them to be, but as far as my experience in this last 13 months in the WordPress industry, I have never been treated as though I am not an intelligent person. In fact, most of the developers I talk to just talk to me like I know what they're saying. They never go blah, 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 whatever. I mean, I had this huge conversation with Ben Cool about unit testing. He just goes, oh yeah, it's just like plumbing. Once he knows construction, you know, he just started explaining to me like plumbing. I was like, oh yeah, I totally get that. Nobody's ever talked down to me. So it's like this industry honors smart women. They want smart women. There's just not a lot of women who are in it. But I mean, even at US, I'd say there's at least 40% women. I don't know if you looked around.
Your testimony is very encouraging, I must say. Do you think that there are problems that are really on your mind that you would like to see us work on, or just any things that you think should be more aggressively changed?
Well, Women Who WP is working on being a nonprofit. We're waiting for our 501c3 status. And what we want to do, because this is my pet theory, I don't think, and I've talked to several WordCamp organizers, and I think that you will also agree, I think that women don't apply to speak because they don't feel that the cost to speak for free, to travel somewhere to speak for free, is worth it. And so they self-deselect. So I think if we can have a scholarship that helps defer travel costs, it would be a really helpful thing to get them to apply in the first place. I was talking to Adam Silver a few months ago, and he goes, yeah, but you're supposed to really be local. I go, right, so you're my local camp, and I have to pay for a dog sitter. So it cost me $60 to just go there and be a person and volunteer, right? So we forget that even local camps have travel costs, hotel costs, if not flight costs. And so I think that if we can help with some of that cost, then we can encourage more women to apply, because I think that they just don't apply. They're super smart. They just don't apply.
I ask you this not strictly out of just casual passing curiosity, but I am truly, genuinely interested. As a organizer of a meetup, I'd like to see more participation. As an organizer and a co-organizer of multiple WordCamps, I am always trying to work on the problem of diversity and work very aggressively on it. And we're doing a little bit better every year, but still nowhere close to where I want to be. And as an employer and just a member of this community that I love, like, what can I do to be better? And how can I just improve?
I mean, I think that we are diverse. I think to say that we aren't is wrong, because if you look at the regular world, it's not inclusive. It's not inclusive of a lot of things that we totally are fine with or whatever. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody cares what religion or race or ethnicity you are in WordPress. Nobody cares. There's a little, it leans a little left. Like, there are some Republicans, there are a few of us, but you know, that's the only thing where I ever felt like, wow, guys, there's a few Republicans in the crowd, just so you know. Doesn't mean we hate people. But no, I've never felt like that at all. I've always felt included. In fact, I felt more. That's why I didn't trust it. That's why when I was talking to Jeff Zinn about it, I was like, I don't trust this. Like, I am really having a hard time believing that people just like me. I don't know how else to say it. It's just such a weird, it's just a weird, funny thing, you know? And it's not that, so I think that and this is why I brought up this Wonderland, because a lot of times in WordPress, we go, okay, I'm putting on my blinders, right? I'm just gonna only read WordPress things and only see WordPress things and only look at the world from this lens. But if you were in my world, I mean, I wasn't even allowed to go to meetups because I needed to be there to answer the phone. And I wasn't allowed to have ideas. And I wasn't allowed to be a person. And I wasn't greeted when people walked in the door.
Sure. That's okay. Amazing. Yeah.
So I come here and like when I went to US, every 4 feet was somebody I knew. I could not believe. I walked in the door, Kathy from Atlanta was like, Bridget! And I walked 4 feet, somebody else was like, Bridget! And this girl stands next to me. She goes, oh my God, I'm standing next to a WordPress star. I'm like, really, where? I'm seriously, I didn't know who she was referring to. I don't see myself like that because I'm so used to people not even liking me or wanting to hear from me at all. So I would say that if you think that we're not inclusive, I'd say go look at some other industries or even tech outside of WordPress, because I feel like we are very inclusive. I feel always included, but that doesn't mean that people sometimes need a little more incentivization. You know, I think that there could be some more formal mentorships. I mean, do you want to get real? I'll get a little bit real.
Let's get real right now.
And Russ, Aaron, and I have talked this out, and he's blogged about it, and it's public record on the internet. But like just that, there's a little bit of dismissiveness when you say just Google it. To somebody who's brand new, who doesn't even know where to start, saying just Google it is like, well, you know, I really don't have time for your lame ass question. So just, you know, go on your computer and you could type in questions and it will answer it for you. And I'm like, Google isn't really meant to be our mentor. Now, Roy Savant talks about Google Fu a lot, and you can learn to ask questions better, which I believe in because I believe in the Socratic method, which is teaching by questions. I'm not against questions, but I think that sometimes we need to think that people that are new maybe need a little bit of guidance and discernment, because if you Google free WordPress themes, can you trust that first page or the second or the third? This is what I'm saying. So discernment is something a new person doesn't have. And that's why mentorship is really important. And so I was lucky because I had Jason Tucker and I had Russ and I had a bunch of people that came around me and mentored me, and they would let me ask them questions without being like, gosh, Bridget, why don't you just Google it? I mean, like, I'm this stupid person that doesn't know how to use the internet. You know what I mean? And then guess what happens? You don't ask that person questions ever again. And you've lost that opportunity for that mentorship, for that relationship to exist. So guess who I trust when I have questions? Jason Tucker, Russ Aaron, Alex Vasquez, Adam Silver. Oh, it might be the people that mentored me. You know what I'm saying? Like, we forget that. And in our meetups, now we have really great meetups. I don't know about anybody else's meetups, but our rule in our meetups is there is no stupid question. Like, you cannot do that. And they will go through and explain things to you or send you to a resource to learn about it better, right? And there's nothing wrong with that because self-discovery is important. And a lot of times people will go to a meetup to get free work, I've heard from organizers. And so that's, you know, it's a weird thing because we are very generous as a community, but we also honor self-discovery and self-learning. So that in between that is like a little bit of mentorship that's missing. I'd like to see a little bit more of that happening more formally. But
Great.
I wouldn't say it's a complaint. I would say that's what's going to get us over, you know, the law of infusion of innovation. You know, like you have the early adopters, you have the innovators, and the early majority. But we're not ever going to get over that early majority because we've run out of self-taught people. By the time you get to the half of that, only a certain percentage of the population are self-taught. The rest of them need guidance. If you want WordPress to get beyond 27%, you're going to have to start mentoring. And that's, I mean, Matt started the WP World Council. I think that they see that that is a need, both in marketing and in mentorship. But I think mentorship would be cheaper.
Sure. Yeah. That
I don't have any
makes
opinions.
perfect sense. There's a lot of logic in what you say, Bridget. I must say.
I'm a sucker for a good TED Talk, I'll tell you. I love that Simon Sinek. I mean, there's a truth. There's a few things I would say. Watch the Simon Sinek's talk on Start With Why. Like, you might have read the book, but it's good to remind yourself of what we're doing here. And also Brene Brown on vulnerability. It's not just for women. You know, it's hard to ask a question and feel like the person who doesn't know that Angular is a JavaScript library or whatever. And then I would say start listening to things from other industries, you know, because it's so easy because this is our culture and our friends and our business and our job. Their whole life is WordPress. It's like all my hobbies are WordPress now. Everything I do is WordPress and a little bit of church, right? So like, it's just, that's the only thing I'm seeing. So when you learn from other industries and how they did things, and that's why I like the Stephen B. Johnson, is because he ties all this in. That the computer didn't just happen. Somebody programmed a music box, and they used that technology to program a loom, and that became the punch card that IBM did for the census. And then all of a sudden, you've got programmable machinery with removable software and hardware, and that just came from this other. And so we need to think about problems differently by exposing ourselves to other industries and trades.
Fantastic. You're going in some cool places, some cool directions here, Bridget. I almost wish we had like another hour to just go down this rabbit hole even further.
Well, you can always find me when you're running out of guests.
Yeah. This is a big community. I've not even gotten close yet.
I know, but if you're hard up for one, you know.
I'm sure there's people who are tuning in now or in the future who want to continue down that rabbit hole. And the good news is you're going to be at a lot of events in the future that they can bump into you.
Yes.
And talk about that. So the next question I have for you is on your calendar for this beautiful, fresh new year, 2017 that we have in front of us. Where might people bump into you IRL?
I applied to speak at Atlanta, and we're definitely going to Atlanta. And then WordCamp San Diego. So weekend after that, if you don't want to go to Miami, sorry, it's just the way the world works. Definitely LA and Orange County. But the WordCamp schedule isn't really set in stone as early as some people would like it to be. I just know that we're going to go to like 12 to 15. I'm also on the internet. I'm also on WP Blab. We're always looking for guests every Thursday night at 7:30 Pacific. But yeah, I will be traveling more, and of course, US next year and Nashville. So
Exciting.
for sure, Atlanta and San Diego, and those are in March. I have no idea what's happening in February.
February. Oh man, who plans that far ahead?
Well, I'm just saying.
Well, you can see.
If you want to hit 12 WordCamps, it'd be ideal if you could go to one a month, but that's just not how it rolls, is it?
Yeah, it's pretty challenging. It really is. I think that there's a pretty persistent issue with WordCamp organization not getting it on the calendar as soon as a lot of eager participants would like. And I try to live by that criticism, and you will see that any WordCamp that I am responsible for, all or in part, it gets on the calendar pretty early.
Oh yeah, Ann Arbor's already on the books.
Oh, it's been on the books for quite some time. It's the farthest out scheduled.
I know. I look at that all the time. So good job, Kyle.
That's something that I take quite seriously, and I appreciate it.
Planning your budget, like Jason has to plan our budget.
Right.
So everybody, all 7 of us are going to WordCamps,
Yeah, if I want to ask serious speakers and sponsors to participate, last minute requests, that's just not very gracious. So anyway, are you actively involved in the organization of any events this year? I
have been asked to be on my local, and I'm usually tweeting for LA and San Diego, so I think I'm still doing that.
That's a big help.
I don't know for sure, but
that's a big
pretty
help.
busy with work. Yeah, because like 5 months on one end, 5 months on the other, I pretty much have like a soccer schedule of tweeting for WordCamps. Those are long seasons, man.
It's a bit unfortunate, it strikes me, that we didn't get a chance to even really in detail at all discuss what it is that you do professionally. So if there's anyone...
It says on the 3rd, I'm a marketing manager for GiveWP.com.
It does say that. And I would say that if anyone is very curious, you are the 3rd person to be on this show from your company.
Yay!
Previously, Devin and Matt were on episodes before. And they talked in greater detail about WordImpress, the business, Give, your number one product. So at this point, we are pretty much out of time, Bridget. So it's unfortunate. Can you tell me the names of a few individuals that you recommend I invite on the show in the future?
I would definitely hit up Rachel Carden, James Tryon. I would hit up Mally and Justine Pretorius. They both do social media for Atlanta and Portland, respectively. Awesome people. I mean, you have a list. Like I said, it's a deep bench. But those are 4 people I didn't notice that should definitely be scheduled.
That's a good list. Rachel's been on the show before.
Okay, accessibility is her thing, man.
Yeah, she's great. Super great.
Kevin Hoffman's really good with ACF.
All right.
On Team ACF, so.
I knew I could count on you to give me some good names.
I could probably waste time giving you names, but those are great people, yeah, for sure.
It surprises me now and then when a guest can't come up with somebody, but it happens.
Well, I do social media. It's my job to know people.
Right.
That's
You're
totally
the person
different.
I should go to.
Just saying, we hold the strings.
Yeah, Bridget, I need a guest.
I know, right? I know, but I need a guest for our show on Thursday, so then that's when I start running out of names. It's easier for me to brainstorm for you than to brainstorm for myself.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, man. Thanks for having me, Kyle. You're so gracious.
Oh, you are too
polite.
It's been a great discussion. I've learned a lot from you. I love everything that you were describing, all of your great illustrations, your knack for giving yourself your own taglines and slogans. And just in general, fun discussion about just some of these important issues, really, and a different, very unique perspective.
Thank you.
So that's been very productive. I think you mentioned a little bit how people can get in touch with you if they're so inclined. If you have any final parting pitches or words of wisdom, you can say them now.
I believe that if you invest in people, they'll invest in you.
That's awesome. I love it. That is such a great sentiment. So we're going to end with that. This has been episode 127 with Bridget Willard of WordImpress. My name is Kyle, doing WordPress stuff in Jackson, Michigan. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you so much, Bridget, for joining me. And we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.